Namaste, beautiful souls.
Hello, welcome everyone.
So we're having a chat about Agenda 2030 from a consciousness perspective, Chris, because there's so many angles that we can look at this looming agenda from, in terms of there's a New World Order agenda, there's the agenda of movement that is about fifth dimensional consciousness, love and unity. And they may seem like they're polar opposites. In many ways they are, but there is a middle point that we want to talk about where there's a way to transcend any potential chaos and calamity that people may feel is impending. Unless you need to have that experience, of course, Chris, because nothing wrong, as you always say, Chris, don't waste a good crisis. Sometimes a crisis, oh, look, we've got a thumbs down. What do I get a thumbs down here for on this is the AI and the StreamYard technology. Didn't like it, but anyway, we'll have fun with it. But we can't waste a good crisis, Chris. And what does that mean in terms of our consciousness journey and what may be coming up in 2030?
Well, the key word that you used at the start there was agenda. So there's an agenda for everything. Daily there's an agenda, whether it's an agenda that I've got to get to work, there's an agenda I've got to look after the kids. Depends on how you look at that word too. So the word itself doesn't necessarily conjure up negativity. Just because there's an agenda for something isn't always meant to be, say, a parallel world, that it's always on the darker side of what it may end up being, rolled out. So we look at that first and we say, okay, well, we went through various agendas, say, in the last 5 years. Now, I guess you've got to look internally for yourself and go, what lessons was in that for me? Was that a positive experience or a negative experience, or did it just go over the top and it never really affected you? So there's a number of areas in that as well. So when I sort of think about what may be coming up in the next rollout of consciousness that we are going to participate in, I guess anyone's verdict or analysis on that can be true. So there's no, direct evidence to say that we're going to be involved in X, Y, Z. At the point, it affects everyone very differently as well. I guess what I can guarantee is when there's been a seismic event that we've been through over the last, let's just say 5 years, there's always a follow-up. How can there not be? It was such a grand plan. It was such a dramatic performance that it always has to have its sequel. And any good Hollywood movie or producer will tell you that. So if you want to look at it from that perspective.
Yeah, and there are narratives out there that love to look at that perspective. And look, there's truth and deception in any of the big movements and any of the big narratives that are currently circulating. And you can lend from any of the movements and narratives what resonates as truth in your heart and discard the rest. So when we talk about world stage players, it really does come down to a lot of theatre, a lot of setting up of big plays to produce a energetic or emotional response from the everyday person. And that's what conjures up and really builds the reality in which we're all participating in. And so there's this sense, and it is documented, someone said to me the other day, Chris, on my social media post that I was stirring up fear by addressing the Agenda 30, what they are actually saying is true, and maybe therefore what we overlay is, that's something to be fearful of. Other people think it's a great thing. But we're going to discuss it because I certainly wasn't wanting to cause loosh or fear. I was merely pointing in a direction of what you can go onto the website of these big players, these big, call them cabal, call them elite, call them politicians, call them world leaders, whatever you want to call them. Not even saying that's wrong or right, believe it or not, because we're talking consciousness today, guys. We're not going to get into right or wrong, otherwise we're staying in polarity. And the whole deal is we're moving into a unified field. A fifth dimensional consciousness is anchoring. It's already anchored for probably most people listening to us, but hopefully you found your way to this video and you're like, okay, what's going on? Let's have a look at another overview, I suppose. So we're not getting into right or wrong, Chris. But look, go onto the website. So let's get technical. They want 15-minute cities so that we have to pay a tax if we go outside of a 15-minute.
It's like a radius of where you live. So it's kind of like a grid operation where whatever your amenities are within that 15 minutes, whether it's a supermarket, a school, clothing stores, whatever it might be. So from that perspective, you would have seen over the last, I would say 10 to 15 years, particularly how suburbs, new ones have come in and been created. So when the civil contractors go in and they put in all their infrastructure and utilities, it's usually to cater for that suburb. So you'll find there's mini marts and all sorts of things that are actually attaching to that now. Whereas, when I grew up, you kind of always had your suburbs and you would go to town on the weekend, and that was a big adventure. So these days they're bringing the town to you. Now, some people may say that, hey, that's really convenient and that's cool. Hey, we're time poor these days because, we've got so many things on the go. So if I got a 5-minute walk down to the shops to get my stuff, that works for me, you beauty. And that's cool. There's nothing wrong with that. But also beneath the layers there, it's also to do with keeping you within an isolated area. So I guess there's a couple of double takes on that. Some people would be very happy with that arrangement, and some people are like, well, I just need to, expand my journey one day and maybe get outside of that so I can breathe. So it will affect people differently. But if you think it's not happening, then it's been happening for a while.
And that's what you're saying about the last few years, that the play has been in place. And so there's, from that side of the ledger, if you like, the play's going to go potentially even bigger. So we're talking about lockdown scenarios, hence the 15-minute cities. What else, Chris? No overseas travel. Now, again, go and look it up. I'm not going to say their website. I don't want to send you to their website, but the websites are there about what the Agenda 2030 is all about. We're not making this up just to cause fear or pandemonium. What else is in there, Chris, that those powers that be are seeking to roll out?
Well, it gets updated and changed quite regularly because, as you know, when things are happening over a longer period of time, there's, I guess, everything other than the kitchen sink in its brainstorming capacity at the start is you go in and go, okay, let's put down 150 things. That might get narrowed down to 50 things. It gets changed over time. So you will see a lot of kind of in and outs with regards to possibilities. A lot of it is also through digital ID, stuff like that, that's all coming in as well. Now, that's not rocket science either.
Cashless is one of them, be a cashless society, which ties in with what you were saying about the digital ID.
Well, cashless has been something that's been integrated over a period of time as well. So I always remember, you probably go back 3 or 4 years ago where I went to work one day, and I'm in a fairly cosmopolitan area where there's a lot of resources. And for the life of me, I couldn't find an ATM. It was literally overnight that it was like, hang on a sec, my bank used to be there and now that's kind of closed. So I'm sure we kind of all had a little bit of an experience with that. And these days it's very hard to actually get your cash out. It's usually at a shopping centre or somewhere where they want you to be a conglomerate. So that one is just a tick in the box because you got to understand a lot of these things don't happen overnight. It feels like it does because it's impactful when it actually does occur, but it's also been a lengthy transition so that it kind of feels like it's seamless. And then you kind of, I guess, in some way have integrated into it. And
you've only got to look, retroactively or retrospectively to Agenda 21. Now, if you go and have a look at the parameters of Agenda 21, I'd say they did pretty good. Those powers that were, wanting to have a say-so on the planet, order people around, lockdown, mask, all of these sorts of things. And so, well, why would they just stop there, Chris? And that's the whole interesting angle of what's happening with the Agenda 2030. And so many people say, well, no, Carrie, come on now. The 15-minute cities are great. And the reason is because, don't you know about climate change, Carrie? We've all got to do our part. Now, look, we don't need to be driving our cars as far. So the 15-minute cities, that's fantastic. And I mean, that's a perspective, right? And this is a consciousness chat. So that perspective, for the people that are touting that is valid, I would say, Chris.
Yeah, I mean, this isn't a pointing or a blaming game. I mean, this is just an open conversation to talk about positives and negatives of it. Regardless of what you feel or think, it's coming. And that's inevitable because there's been nothing but change from year dot. So from that perspective, we're no longer getting around on horse and cart. So there's change in every single aspect of your journey in your life here. So if you are lucky enough to be here for a 100-year cycle, you will see unbelievable change. And that's just inevitable. So that's where I'm coming from with that point. It's how you embrace it and how to impact it, and if it works for you, if it doesn't. What we do forget is the power that we do hold. It's a simple yes or no answer in regards to some things that are occurring. So you either choose to buy a car or you don't. It's that simple. You can walk or have a bike if that's your preferred option. So I know that seems very black and white, but I'm trying to sort of bring it down a level to make it understandable that you still have a lot of certain control over a lot of the decisions that are being made. Yeah. And we forget that sometimes, that the levels of power that we do hold. I mean, the only reason these agendas or new facilities come in is because you've abided by it. So in other words, you're utilizing it. So if the masses are starting to, get involved with it, or it becomes part of their life, then of course they're going to continue to upgrade that technology. So getting back to the car, like if everyone said no and we would prefer to ride our bike, then of course the car manufacturers would only have a limited edition that are coming out. But no, we like the car and we purchase them. So that's why there's so many brands and that there's so many accesses to them. Now I know that's a very kind of loose, example, but we're trying to sort of say, hey, embrace what the agendas are moving forward. However, your consciousness will be the one that dictates whether it's a negative or a positive for you.
Yeah. And for, if I'm speaking on behalf of both Chris and I, we're on the perspective of not towing any line with any external authority in terms of our divine right to move around this planet at will, as our inner guidance says so in each moment. So this is the other side of what we want to talk about today, because consciousness, as Chris is saying, can be used in the direction of your own will. And there is no such thing as having to give up your sovereignty, if you like. It's been a popular phrase or popular word over the last few years, which really means give up let me change it again, for divine right. Your divine right to make choices that serve your heart, your soul, your inner being, to stay in a state of balance. And so in this moment of now, for those who choose this, you don't have to choose this. You have permission to set up ahead of time, as these agendas start rolling in, to say, I don't acknowledge them. I don't abide by them. I don't accept them. They're not part of my frequency. They're not part of my field of experience. You can absolutely use your consciousness in the direction of saying, that doesn't exist to me. And so this will get confusing maybe, because on the one hand, we're saying this is coming, be aware. On the other hand, we're saying we can choose for it not to actually roll out in our own personal field. And this is where people get very confused by what consciousness is always pointing you towards, what your higher, deeper self is always asking of you, which is you are the creator of reality. So if we bypass the fact that there's agendas going on because of just what happened over the last few years, if we're that blind to say, oh, that's not going to happen, as Chris is saying, well, you've missed the point. So you have to paradoxically go, okay, that's a timeline that very much will happen unless I make a decision to utilize my own free will and consciousness in this moment to go, you know what, I'm blasting that away. And so it can seem a little bit paradoxical or confusing, but that's the absolute point of these sort of discussions, to see what's looming, to see a probable timeline based on, as Chris is saying, where the masses put their consciousness, where the masses give their permission, if you like. Giving permission to something is everything in terms of how universal law works, or divine code, or cosmic law works. Where you say so, your energy is going is where you'll end up. And you are that powerful. You're already doing it. You just maybe have been giving up your power to an external force because your conditioning, your awareness up until that point, thought, I'm not going to make this right or wrong, but, you know, it was innocent for many people, thought politicians had our best interests at heart. Now, do they or don't they? That's up to you to decide, not even for us to tell you. But you do have the power, this is the point of this discussion, to go, you know what, I don't consent. I don't abide by what external forces are telling me to do. When I have the divine right to roam this planet at will as I'm guided to do so, which is more the fifth dimensional consciousness, Chris. So let's chat about what that fifth dimensional consciousness 2030 looks like.
Well, the planet is not owned by any particular group or faction. It's not as if we're sitting here as tenants under a lease agreement. It might feel like that at times. But from that perspective, yeah, of course you have freedom to roam here. It's your planet. It's our planet. It's everybody's planet. We all have a stake in the shareholding of this planet, and that's how we can reshape it. Now you might think, oh, that's woo-woo and wah-wah bullshit talk. Well, I'm sorry, it's correct, because the minute that you were incarnated here and the minute that you were born was your stake in the claim here of having an existence and a journey that best fits your vessel. So if you want to be led at every single moment and told what to do, how to do, and where to do, then that's your prerogative. But you're missing the point of having, as Carrie said, you know, a dimensional journey here too, because it's not always about staying in the same scenario year after year after year. And that's another word for dimension, is that, let's just say you want to stay in a third isolated dimension and you don't want to go to grade 4, grade 5, grade 6, grade 7. It's the same analogy. At some point you're going to have to evolve and give yourself an opportunity to be the best version of yourself as well. So that's kind of another way of explaining dimension, is it's an upgrade. It's gathering maturity along the way. Because some people get a little bit concerned about the words dimensions and, you know, fifth stratospheres and all these sorts of things, which can be a little bit galactic and maybe a bit cosmic for people. But when we bring it back to an understanding where you're all involved in that, it is a collective, and you've probably heard that word many, many times as well. Of course it's true.
Yeah, that's beautifully said, because it's the frequency of which we all add to. And I would go as far as to say that majority of people are still not claiming their creative power. Majority of people, and maybe that's why we'll use the word a third dimensional view. Oh, I don't know, the AI is giving us balloons. We're not pressing any buttons. That is just crazy. So anyway, that's the celebration, I guess, with the balloons, because it's that choice, again, exercising the free will to upgrade. It's just graduation. You know, if we call this Earth School, so it's like, okay, I wasn't going to be kept down in grade 3. I'm actually going to go, we say dimensionally to grade 5. We skip a dimension, not really, because the 4th dimension's our astral or symbolic or energetic self. It's where you go, where you dream. You do it every day. It's not woo-woo again. It's just reality. So, but a 5th dimension is more the embodiment. What we feel more is this flesh aspect, where things have a linear timescape, where there's a sequence of events, if you like, that makes sense to the logical mind. Now, once you're in a 5th dimensional consciousness, then you have a 60 astral. So it means your symbolic, energetic, thought, emotional, visionary self, what you interact with in the unseen realms, you know, loved ones who have crossed over, guides, all that world becomes more expanded. We talk about dimensions. We're going to talk about frequency, bandwidths, also visibility spectrum. You see into the etheric world. You may, and many people have galactivated in the last few years. This is the beauty of these agendas from the, quote unquote negative positive side, and finding the middle point where they need each other to create momentum for shift and change and transcendence. Without the quote unquote dark side playing their hand, people aren't going to fight for their soul. So this is the point of consciousness chats. You hear people out there going, this is right and this is wrong. As soon as people say that, they've missed the entire view of what their soul came to experience, which is, it is as it is. Now, don't get me wrong. I go on a rant and a rave a lot of times. Like, you're allowed to get fired up and fierce about stuff. You're meant to. You're meant to let the emotional body run and go, you know what? I will not consent. They can all get effed. That's part of your fierce nature, to fight for your soul and draw yourself into that next dimension, into that expanded view where you are dignified. You have integrity because you have made what matters important, and that's inner self, inner heart, inner soul, inner radiance, inner beauty, inner love. If you command that from yourself, you're radiant of that, and everyone gets picked up in that frequency field. Now, imagine, Chris, if these light nodal points all over the planet are doing that, which they are, we know, we're seeing it, what happens then?
Well, we reconnect, because a point that I probably wanted to raise is that through all the experiences that we've actually had in, say, once again, the last, say, 5 years, we're better equipped. We've had an experience. So without that experience, you wouldn't know what it's like to have certain rules and regulations put upon you that were literally, I guess you could say the word, forced. So are you better equipped for having that experience? Of course you are. You know what's coming, or you know how to coexist in that world to survive. I mean, what you did for yourself or your children or your family, you became leaders of your own domain. Now, who would have ever thought that, I came here to be a leader? Well, of course you did, because at that moment, whatever choice you made, it doesn't matter. That's irrelevant what the choice was. You took leadership and you did what you felt was the right move, or the right, activity that was best for you and your family. So I just want to make that point first, that we all have it in us to be able to take responsibility and go forward with our own, I guess you could say, our own, believe it or not, agenda. So from that perspective, again, there's a positive take on the word, and how we coexist in whatever is coming at you in the next round of events will be a much embracing better experience, because this time you may co-pilot it. You may have the ability to be able to go, all right, seen this before, and it's not even seen this, because it'll be a different set of circumstances, but I've felt this before. This feeling is familiar, that I've been in this realm before, and I got through it last time because I'm still here talking to you. So from that perspective, yeah, we take our lessons and we move forward. Now, moving forward could be an interesting one, because the brakes were put on in the original one where you couldn't move too far at all. But again, that was just a physical experience.
Yeah, and I exactly, because I feel that's why consciousness erupted, because whether we liked it or not, the lockdown promoted, not for everyone I know, but for many, to go really deeply inward. You had space to rest, to meditate, to daydream, to ponder, to reflect. And for me, obviously, as a long-time healer, I know these processes work, and it sets up magnetism. The world had been heavily based on an Atlantean model of our previous civilization, as we cycled into Earth civilization, which was the electric nature, or the patriarchal, or the masculine nature. Perfect, like nothing wrong with it. We've all got that aspect to our inner self. But electricity without its counterpart magnetism, to draw then what you're wishing for, wanting to create, to draw it back for the embodied experience. I would say it's only now that people are switching on their magnetism, and it's through all the feminine practices. It's through rest. It's through dance. It's through not even making sense emotionally. You're allowed to just run the emotional body without it having to have a logical, understanding. And so I feel like, we're moving full throttle now, balancing that feminine, masculine nature within. You're seeing a lot of the twin flames coming together, because once that's established within, then it magnetizes externally. So this is the love story of the true earth, that's coming online in such a rapid way. People really getting on board with just being absolutely joyous on their own and not needing anything. And that's the paradox again. This is why we always talk about paradoxes in consciousness, because the choice to be absolutely alone and in love with self and joyous for no reason at all, just making yourself the most nourishing meal every night, and having your glass of wine, watching your Netflix, just daily life, just life, dancing in the kitchen, whatever you're doing that's in your creative joy and your expansion of self. If you are in that as true joy alone, whether you kind of want it or not, you're going to magnetize your counterpart, because you've come home to self. And so then the fueling of these twin forces come together. Now, no one can break twin force. It is feminine and masculine by nature. It is the atomic reality of all creation. So these are the pathways that are going to open up for many people. The twin flaming, it happens between planetary systems. It happens between galactic systems. It's all the way out on the macro, like Milky Way and Andromeda. They are getting together in 40 billion years. Like, even science will tell you that. So all the way out from the macro perspective and the galactic perspective is mirroring. You always say this, Chris, it's a prism effect. It mirrors through the dimensions and then comes to roost really back home in the heart of, this is who we all are, and this is the joy of stepping into these unified dimensions where we're no longer in polarity. Now, polarity 3D is said in the galactic lore as the most treacherous of the dimensions, because you've forgotten. It's got spiritual amnesia. You've forgotten who you are. You got your left hemisphere and your right hemisphere of the brain. They're going to battle with each other. Then you're battling everyone else outside of you as that mirror. And then you get tired. You get so tired, Chris, of polarity and duality, don't you? And what is that about? What's that cycle? Like, almost like the galactic dark night of the soul that all of us in this planetary system have been through.
Well, we are on a planet where we are a solid matter. So from that perspective, we're grounded. So as we walk on a material surface here, we feel everything. So we have a physical body that is able to extract everything that's going on around us and intake it as well. So, that's literally our emotional state. So when we are walking around this planet, we have days of happiness, sadness, grief, joy, and we're all very aware of that. So that's one of our beautiful, magnificent qualities, that we're able to experience all that. I mean, there's no use having love making and then walking away from going, well, that wasn't great, was it? So some people might have that scenario.
Look, I'm not talking about you, but let's be honest, in the past, there's been some not great experience.
But it's meant to be a joyous, connective, beautiful twin flame experience where
ultimately
you're having an emotional expression between each other, and that gives you feelings of joy, feeling loved, nurtured, and supported.
Yeah.
So my point being is that, that's one of our great traits. It's one of our allies. But being here as well has its contrasts. So for every day, you're going to have a polar opposite as well at some point. And that's balancing out the equation. That's the beauty about being here. We're very blessed to be here at this point in time too, because our other mirroring effect that is occurring out in the cosmos is having an experience as well. It's just having a different experience in its own embodiment. So that could be more of an etheric embodiment that you're having that experience with. So both play a part and both are connected. And at the moment, whilst we're in this vessel on this planet having this experience, don't think that it's not overlaying and in its journey with the other etheric experience it is having as well, because they both play a part in its education. Because without your etheric body, it can't have the physical experience. Without the physical experience, it can't have the etheric experience. Now, people go, what the hell is he just talking about? The easiest way to explain that is to turn around and say, well, every time you have a consciousness moment, now, whether it's through meditation, third eye, astral, that's your etheric experience. That's the two blending together to be the picture that's in your mind at that moment. If you were so grounded all the time, you would only have a limited view. It'd be walking around with tunnel vision. So you're bumping into things all the time.
Yeah, to create.
Correct.
It's like coding in the back end of a website. So you code in the back end of a website, but no one sees the coding. People who go to your website see the banner pages, the front pages. That's all the pretty pictures. That's where the functioning or the reality. I'm talking on, I'm using an example. Yeah. It's the reality of the picture that you see. So it actually, if you see this dimension also as a screen and your physical reality also as a screen that you're passing through, what you're passing through is a reflection of your inner self. And once you take responsibility for that, guess what? Like, some of it's shit. And I know, like, I've got a lot of shit I'm always dealing with. But then you go, but I'm the commander of it. I'm the one that can change it. And if you accept that cycles are slowly sometimes, it's like, oh, you're banging your head against the brick wall. Why can't I get this lesson? That's cool. Love yourself regardless. Keep going into those, unseen spaces that Chris is talking about, that etheric nature, because in there, the coding in the back end of the website, you recode, the picture's different on the front end. And, you are beyond powerful. Anyone listening to this, please know you're beyond powerful. Like, it's not that you actually even have to do anything to gain that power. You have that power inherently. It's already operating through you. It's just a readjustment sometimes to come back inwardly and love self no matter what the chaos that's going on externally. And to know that you're enough, no matter what, power plays you're in with other people, to give yourself that grace, to give yourself that gift, and to also recognize as you do that, that grace is in every being. But as you switch and change and come back to that true self-love and that true self-acceptance and that true knowing that you're the creator being here, and you can change the channel at any time, you can recode self at any time. Sometimes you'll move out of the orbital spin of where souls are in those destructive cycles. And Chris, a lot of people know, because it happened publicly and I talk about it publicly. I went through, the last few years of being publicly slandered for years on end. And I mean, like, the worst of the worst stuff. And I came to see that entity that was doing that to me was myself in another timeline. And Chris helped me with this from a consciousness perspective. He talks about sliding doors. So all the sliding doors parts of myself where I took the quote-unquote lower road would lead to a timeline where I became a character that was, in my opinion, so hideous, that could be so nasty about someone else, making up pure lies about me just to target me. And I came to the point in the consciousness journey internally that was me. And I had the power to not go on that regressive timeline, and that I had to interface with it as my own karma to balance out all of the crap that I've done here, and here. On this lifetime timeline, past life timelines, doesn't matter. When I take responsibility for it, I can transcend it. Now, a lot of people don't want to do the work at that point. They just want to play victim. And yeah, I was victimized, but I don't want to remain victim, because if I'm victim, I'm not creator. So at some point, you go, all right, I'm getting into these worlds and I'm transforming and I'm transcending, and I'm seeing a lot of people do it, Chris. And I would say that, a lot of us have been through the ring, haven't we, guys, the last few years, and being initiated, like, we didn't know. Like, I was a bit ballsy coming in 2020. I'm like, oh, I'm going to speak out. And I'm targeting, trolling, slandering. it's an initiation. And if you've been initiated, I know a lot of you that are listening have been, what's the gift? What's the gift of that, Chris, of the other side of the initiation?
Well, the beauty about it, which I know is hard when you're in the moment and just say you're having a complex experience where it's all coming at you at once. But the beauty within that is that it won't last forever. It always has a start and an end date. So from that perspective, it's not nice being in the quagmire, having kind of this trudgy feeling that I'm in the swamp and I can't get anywhere. Again, as Kari said, that with the work and the acceptance of the position that you're in, it will dissipate. It will become clearer. But the work's got to be done in that moment. If you just want to stay there and lay victim, it will be a repetitive pattern. And I'm sure you've seen that many times before. It's because you haven't taken ownership of it. Where's my responsibility in this arrangement that's occurring? How have I attracted that? Why does it keep repeating itself? That's where you take the ownership of it and you change its direction. Now, that's not an overnight success either, because a lot of us have patterns that occur for 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years. So sometimes we're slow learners, but that's also another part of maybe we haven't got the lesson yet. So maybe you're going to keep getting that same scenario pop up, and it's just going to get a little bit more, I guess you could say, heightened as it goes along the way. So originally it turned out to be, I just stubbed my toe. Suddenly 10 years later, you broke your toe. So it gets a little bit more dramatic along the way. But the beauty about it, as I keep coming back to, is that we have control of that situation too, because we're one of the few species that has this yin and yang experience that really does affect our emotional state. But the reason they have that for you is because you wouldn't understand the levels of joy unless you've had the sorrow. It doesn't mean you have to stay in one or the other. In fact, actually, in my own humble opinion, it's actually detrimental to stay in one or the other. Now, we've got a lot of light workers that it's all about love and light and unicorns and rainbows, which it is, and bring that on in spades. But there's also the dark side of that as well, where there's the shadow side. Now,
there's vampires, there's troglodytes. I don't know what that's wanting to come through.
Demons and jackals and all sorts of things that are trying to attach themselves to you.
I mean, Draco. Well, that's a common one we talk about now. But even within, this is again how consciousness works. Even within those circles, there's ones that are choosing to move out of that orbital spin and seek for love again. But that point in time, they're still caught in the web of that frequency. So, anyone who thinks they've got the answers or the right and the wrong of how other beings should act don't truly understand how consciousness works, and that we all take our spin turn, if you like, as all of these different characters, because we want to play all the characters in the script, because that's what God, Goddess, is all about, having the full experience. And we are the godlet, the goddesslet. Can you say that? We are the fractal of the whole. It's like the droplet in the ocean. You can't take a droplet out of the ocean and say it's not the ocean. It's the all within the droplet. But is there a more expanded ocean? Yes, of course there is. So, these are bigger concepts. But Chris, I want to hand it over to you, because I feel like it's a good time to share, if you're open to it, an astral journey that you just went on that seems symbolic as to how the oversoul aspects or the multidimensional avatar aspects of ourself operate in different dimensions, and how you can go and tweak some of these timelines or dimensional frequency experiences, if you like, to change this reality. But Chris, he often, as many of you know, he's often in the astral looking around, seeing what's going on, getting called in for certain missions.
Yeah, I had a mission only 2 nights ago, which is not dissimilar to a lot of missions that have come through. But astral missions are really interesting because you don't know at what point you're being called up for what type of mission. And not every mission is to do with rescue and combat and warring, etc. A lot of it is also about, I guess, working on your own consciousness as well. So having an experience in the astral can also be a very enlightening and a very loving experience, and also a very rewarding experience. And it may be something in cahoots with Gaia or some spirit guides or whatever the case may be. So it just happened that this particular mission was an interesting one, where I was called upon to be on a rescue mission, but it was off-world, which a lot of these actually are, because as I sort of mentioned before, we are having multiple lives in multiple dimensions at multiple times. Now, there's a lot of multiples in that. But this particular one there was some interesting events where, I guess, no dissimilar to what happens here on Earth, because remember, get back to that mirroring effect. A group of very special people had been taken without consent to an off-world grid, which is no dissimilar to, say, like children being stolen and taken to an underground facility. Get my drift? So from that perspective, these people were energetically asking for, I guess, some help. So from that reason, I was transported to this particular realm, where we were able to go and see what was actually occurring. What was the agenda there? The interesting part of that is the agenda was, it was an experimental area. So these people were taken for, I guess, an experiment. And I won't go into full details about all of that, because there's conspiracies everywhere about that sort of stuff. So just be aware that that's the subject matter. So at the end of the day, the mission was to not only find out what was actually occurring, but see if we were able to assist in trying to rescue or get these people away from that experimental situation. So moving forward, we were able to devise a plan to not only get these people off, but collect the data that was occurring there as well. So why was this occurring? Why was this experimentation in play? So from that perspective, it was a duality. It was an education to go, okay, is this a possibility of something that could happen in a future timeline? Is this a warning? Is this something that's occurring right now? Or have we already experienced it? It's just that you haven't got the full message, so you've had to go back and pick up the pieces of the puzzle. There's a number of different scenarios that are occurring in there. But what it was, again, like most things that occur in the astral, is it's giving you an insight into what your role is. Can you be of assistance? Can you take this information and bring it back and outlay it into the possibilities of what could occur here? And that's how I see astral. Astral works in so many different dimensions. It works in the here and now. It also works in the possibilities of what could be. And it's also bringing the history side in, as in, this is what occurred. It's now overlaying, and it could possibly happen again. So we're just giving you a remembrance journey. So that's the beauty of astral, is it covers all 360 degrees of the actual consciousness of why you're there. In this particular one, where we were able to get the people out, was a wonderful experience to be able to assist in that way. But we also took some valuable information with us as well. But what I did learn at the end of that journey was there's parallel worlds with certain rules, and a lot of the rules were made up. Now, these could be galactic rules or universal rules, but they're only for certain sections. The overlay rule that allowed that to actually be, I guess, I don't like using this word, but let's just say that we won the day. But what it was just an experience. The overlay rule that occurred was a law that is universal. And I'm not talking about LAW, I'm talking about LORE, which actually is a tribal indigenous law here on our planet, is also a law that occurs in the cosmos, and it overlays and it transcends and it overrides any law that is put into place. So how am I bringing this story back to what's occurring here is that we do live in a planetary system that we perceive is governed by LAW. And that has its positives and negatives as well. It doesn't mean that we should all now go out and break it. What I'm saying is that that's just a infrastructure that has been put in that is transmutable as well. It changes. The laws are not the same as what they were 10 years ago. They're forever evolving as well. My point of my story is that in the overlay of the great existence here, there is one that overrides it all. And no one breaks that, because it's a consciousness scenario where there's ramifications beyond your imagination that if you decide, and that's where we've had in other places where we talk about retribution and Vexthorn and places that are in the cosmos that can actually deal with those scenarios. So we are involved in a timescape where we can blend these two scenarios together. And with that LORE scenario that I'm talking about, we were able to free these captives and take the information with us, because I guess entities from that dimension had come down to stamp their authority to say, let these people pass. They have done no wrong here. We are not allowing these people to also be held captive and suddenly be involved in a scenario where they are under your LAW. So I'm hoping this makes sense, because astral can be a little bit tricky at times because it is all happening in a different world, in a different perspective, with a lot of different languages and a lot of different codes. You've kind of, I guess, 101 for human species, bring it back down to a digestible conversation.
And you were saying to me that you felt like some of the experimentation, if it's okay to share, was that it seemed like these beings were like on speed. They were being given a substance that kept them up and going, and for productivity. And, you know, we had a chat about it over morning coffee, as we do debrief after, you know, the last evening's astrals. And, you know, for me to sort of get it into my mind of how it related to, you know, the dimension that we're living in, is that you see a lot of people, they do act like soldiers. They're up, you know, alarm clock goes, they're up, got to go to work. You know, we call it the NPC life. Now, I'm not saying that's wrong, because we've all got to do our rotation. We're in that way where we're a slave to the grind, if you know what I mean, because we made the fact that money is more important than maybe going and living off grid and, you know, fending for ourselves. Again, not right or wrong. Wherever you're at, it's perfect, right? You're having an experience. What are you learning? You know, it's all great. But there is this sense of, for many people, caught in this rotational spin where they're on speed, always up, gotta go, busy, no space. If you don't have space, you won't hear yourself at the deeper levels of your true inner voice, your God, Goddess voice, your divine voice, whatever you call that. You know, so yeah, that's how I related to what you were telling me. I went, yeah, I can see that for a lot of people here.
It was sort of an experimentation in manufacturing a superhuman. So giving it endless energy of endless bounds of strength, etc. So basically you're creating an army of super troopers.
Well, even like, you know, back in the day, Coca-Cola, and maybe still now, has got cocaine in it. That's a form of like amphetamine.
It is.
And then what are the Red Bull drinks, Monster drinks, I don't know, different countries what you'd have, but the drinks where it's like high caffeine, high sugar, it's just like keep going, keep soldering, keep powering, no, don't stop.
That's when you've kind of got to question that, why is there so many products available to keep us up? Why are you needing to be kept up? Why have you driven yourself so insanely to the level?
Electrical nature, polarized.
That all circuits aren't working. So you need to manufacture some liquid or something to put inside of yourself to bring yourself back up. You've got to question yourself, as in, how did I get to that position to be so depleted of energy in the first place? So are you overworking? Are you overthinking? Are you overanalyzing? Are you physically working too hard? There's many, many aspects. So all you're basically doing is you're broken to that point. So let's glug something down to continue to keep this vessel going. At some point, that's going to fuse the system. You can't operate this system on a false pretense of putting something in it. It's like, my car needs a service, but I'm not going to. I'm just going to keep driving it and filling it up with fuel till it blows up. So every time you put oil and fuel in it.
Shit fuel, you know, not even like, I don't know, the fuel world, because the guys out there, come on, help me out. what's the good fuel that you put in? So, but it's not that. It's yeah.
So that's,
and look, again, we're not judging anyone. If you know that that's you at the moment, hey, give yourself a pat on the back and go, look, there's, as Chris said, there's a reason for it. Forgive yourself, but no, you can choose again. You don't have to stay up and on all the time, because then you're not in your magnetic form. It's got to be rest, in equal balance, and that's not just sleeping at night. That's time out, reflecting, talking to the trees. That's why everyone feels better after a walk. Clear your head, go and have a walk, connect, be. Switch on the magnetism, because that's when you'll attract what it is you truly wish to experience here. You can't just keep putting out the electrical nature of more. You gotta allow it to come in. You gotta be a receptor and a receiver as well. So transmit, receive, and that was our transmission, Chris. I feel like Guides told us to, have a chit chat about this. So here we are.
Yeah, I think it's just a conversation as we gently move into the next cycle. And as kind of the topic of the conversation was, maybe what's going to happen in 2026 through to 2030. Look, from a positive spin, I feel that we've had numerous experiences once again in the last 5 years. I believe that this next cycle will complement that in a way that it's an upgrade, is probably the way that I best can explain. And again, this is the way that you look at these scenarios and events that are put in front of you as well, because you could also take the perspective that in the next 5 years, it's going to be nothing other than shit. Well, if that's your perspective, then welcome to your shit.
I'm going to call out some of the truthers whilst we're here, because you guys, yes, you do know what's going on. I get that, and I praise you. Like, thank God for you guys over the last few years. Do you know what I mean? Like, we wouldn't know half what we know. But there's a point where you don't have to keep ramming the message home, which, it's kind of like what I was accused of. But fair enough. That, I like that guy who said that to me. He's a great guy from American John. But, I was like, well, dude, I'm not really trying to create loosh. I'm just pointing towards agendas, because if people know the deeper part of me, I'm not really a right or wrong person. I'm like, okay, this is a consciousness experience. What are we doing with it? But I get it. I can be a bit, I come across a bit haughty sometimes. I think on my social media, I'm emotional too. I'm like, And so, this is my point to truthers. Not all the truthers, hey, love you guys. Like I was on the David Icke and Family Network. I love truthers. Come on. We need them. But, you don't have to spin the loosh cycle. It's not drama. What's the next big dramatic news story for today? Because I got to get traction on my social media. Like just chill. Like just, speak when you're called to speak, because, we need you. But just maybe be a bit more mindful. Actually, there's a guy, a truther I love, Australian guy. His name's Paul. And I think it's Sellers. Sorry, Paul, if that's not your last, how you say your last name. But he did a post the other day about divine neutrality. Now, this guy's the real deal. Like he went, and to Gaza, he went through that whole era. He faced it. He looked the demon in the eye. The guy's doing the actual work and calling out the truth, not just sitting there on his keyboard each day trying to get a raise out of the the general public and what's drama of the day. So anyway, they're my shout outs. I know there's other great truthers if I haven't mentioned you, but yeah, just want to make a point about that.
Well, we're also living in an era where spirituality, which I don't really like using that word because it's sort of boxing something into a characteristic, but that whole kind of truth of spirituality world has become very, very popular as well. It's kind of having its 5 minutes of fame where people are sort of looking more towards that. What are the answers there? What do you understand? What do you see? Even this is an interaction of trying to get a bit of a grip or an understanding or just even a conversation about the possibilities. So within this world that's mixed in with psychics, healers, yoga teachers, you're all out there. You're all in that magnificent community of having a wonderful gift, which you're sharing. But we're also competing against each other at the moment as well, because there's so many people involved in this industry that are trying to get a leg up. They want to be the one, the Messiah, the one with the message. I told you so. Didn't you read my posts from 3 years ago? They've come true. No one gives a flying fuck what your posts were from 3 years ago, because we have a 5-minute memory. And I'm sorry because it gets me a bit, how you going? Because I'm kind of seeing this
the Messiah
scenario
complex
occur where it's like, we're all got something to say.
Puzzle. Yeah, we've all got a piece.
We've all had an experience.
But Chris, it is true that I know I did a post in 2021 and I called out and I mean, I was specific. This is like, I'll toot my own horn as a psychic. I was so specific, date timed it and everything. And I get date time's not a great thing because timelines will change depending on consciousness. But so far, I haven't been wrong. I'm just saying. But look, I've got heaps of friends that are psychics and grid workers, and we don't have to have the Messiah complex.
No, it's just
stay innocent and learn from each other too. Like, that's fun.
Look, it's an unattractive, ugly look, because at the end of the day, your ego is taking over. At the end of the day, you're trying to be put above the breast of the pack. It's
only because of the inner little boy or inner little girl wound that's unhealed. I see that in a lot of people. They just, they've had to fight hard since they were little kids, because they've been abused or whatever's happened. And they just haven't done the work yet. And I think many are doing it currently just to go, hey, I'm enough. I don't have to be on this constant need to prove, even if I did say it somewhere over here and someone else said it and they got the limelight for it, go celebrate them. It's cool. But, these are deeper nuances of inner work we're all doing as we go through. But it's a tribe, it's an earth tribe. Amazing, gifted, wise souls out there that I know on social media I interact with every day. And I haven't met them in person, but I know their frequency. And I would have met them in person in other time frames. So
look, there's nothing wrong with promoting your insights and your messages, no different to what we're doing here today. But when you go to a level where you're saying this is right or this is wrong and this is the way, once again, that's just a number of myriad of opinions. But if you're going to be that strong in them, which is fine, I encourage you to be strong in your opinions, but be aware that there's consequences for that too.
Well, polarity again. Yeah.
They will target you and they will come for you. Because the higher up the chain of consciousness that you go, where more masses are listening to you, there's levels of persecution there too. Yeah. Because within every group and every society, there's the backstabber, the one that wants your position. You see it a lot in political regimes, like you've got a prime minister, the opposition party is throwing nothing but dirt and mud and lies and all sorts of scenarios at them for you to have a change of opinion so that they can stab them and take the leadership role.
Yeah.
So just be aware that there is a cosmic cycle of evolution when it comes to your, rising within your talent, that the shadow side is always there as well.
It's part of the initiation.
Correct.
And I'm going to keep this on an hour because me and Chris, we'll come back. We'll be back again soon, but I will keep it under an hour. Help me. So we're trying not to do lives anymore because Facebook takes our lives down, so it's pre-recorded, but trying to upload it. Anyway, you guys don't need to know my logical thinking. We love you all. Thanks for being here. And we might come back and talk about that, Chris, and we call it single white female, single white male it's not white. It's just based off that movie where also people will mimic you to the point because they're so enamored by you. Truly starts out as love, but then they want to become you. So they've got to destroy you to become you. So anyway, we might come back and talk about that juicy little nugget. Mwah.
Thanks for listening.
Adios, amigos.